Hey, I'm Ron Drotos from keyboardimprov.com, and welcome to our journey through the real book, number 220, Lullaby of Birdland by George Shearing, one of the most popular tunes to play in the whole real book. And like all the other jazz piano lessons in this series, this is to help us understand music, not just how to play chord scales or something like that. How are we understanding what we're playing? Because that's going to get us farthest. And it's actually what music's about, right? We want to learn and enjoy this music in a wider context, at least how we understand it, wider context than just notes on the page. So I'm going to tell a quick George Shearing story, and then we'll get into what I would love to call the truth about block chords, because it is the truth about block chords, and it's not what's being put out there on the internet very often these days. So the first one, so in the 90s, I used to perform at a place called the 92nd Street Y in New York City. They had a beautiful auditorium, 9-foot grand Steinway grand piano on stage. And I used to do a series called Lyrics and Lyricists. I was a musical director for some of the programs. And what it was you would put together like a whole program, basically a Broadway show almost, of like 40 songs by one lyricist. I think the one I'm thinking of was Cole Porter. Yes, it was Cole Porter. And so great tunes, you know, Let's Do It, Begin the Begin, Every Time We Say Goodbye, So in Love, unbelievable songs by Cole Porter. And you'd put together the show with like I think it was 7 actors, singers, and some danced, plus piano, bass, and drums. And we put together a whole show in 5 weeks, do 6 performances on a weekend, 5 or 6 performances, and then like 2 shows a day, and then a Monday matinee, and then that was it. You never saw it again. And they'd always have a famous host narrator, like Kitty Carlisle-Hart did one that I narrated. She had known Cole Porter. You know, it was really wonderful, and she'd introduce each tune, and then we'd play it. So it was wonderful, very formal concerts. I wore a tuxedo. And it was nice because as musical director, I'd get a formal announcement and introduction onto the stage. So my friend Barry Levitt, who was sort of my mentor on Broadway, we did Swinging on a Star together and many other shows, he was the producer of this. So it's really intense and beautiful auditorium with about, I don't know, 850 people, 1,000 people. And so I was really worried, you know, like, this has got to be really good, and I'm playing, and I've got to cue all the musicians and all this. And it was early in my career, and I really wanted it to be good, and I'm a little nervous, right? And so finally, by the last show, Monday afternoon, hey, we got through Saturday, we got through Sunday night. This is the easy show because it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. It's a lot of people, a lot of retirees, senior citizens that live on the Upper East Side. They're not judgmental. They just want to get out and see a nice show of Cole Porter's music, right? The critics aren't there anymore. They came Saturday or Sunday. So I'm finally feeling completely relaxed. Like, okay, I've got one more show to go, and I'm just going to enjoy this one. So Barry Levitt and I are standing right off the stage. The whole audience is ready. The bass player and a drummer walk on stage, and Barry's about to go on, welcome the audience, give a little introduction, and then introduce me to walk on stage. And right as we're about to do that, the producer, her name was Hadassah Markson, wonderful woman, she came backstage to wish us luck. And she goes, oh, you boys look so good in your tuxedos, blah, blah, blah. She goes, by the way, George Shearing and his wife are here today. Oh, I've got to go, showtime, ta-ta. And she leaves to go to her seat. And I'm just thinking, I just break out into a complete sweat and my heart starts pounding. I'm thinking, George Shearing, wonderful, originally from Great Britain, moved to New York. I knew he lived on the Upper East Side, a few blocks from where I lived, but I'd never seen him around. I know someone who auditioned for him, went to his apartment. I don't know, he lived maybe in the 80s in one of those apartments. I was at 91st and 3rd. And Barry then walks out to introduce me, and I'm left there, and I'm like, how do I do this show? George Shearing was one of my idols. As a teenager, I transcribed his solo on One for the Woofer, which is a Billy Taylor tune. I remember playing with Brian Dorff, the bass player, who was on that, asking him about George Shearing, one of my idols. And then I'm thinking also because George Shearing was sightless, I'm thinking, he's not distracted by the dancers. He's going to listen to every note that I play, and he's going to judge it. So I go on stage. We start the first tune, which is like, you know, birds do it. Singers are singing, the bass player and drummer are going, and I'm just like, my heart is just going boom, 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 thinking that George Shearing is judging every single note I'm playing. And after about 2 or 3 tunes like that, I'm thinking, I can't function like this, right? Like, you know, this is crazy. I can't get through 2 hours like this, and I'm not enjoying this at all. And I just started laughing at it, saying, this is so ridiculous. George Shearing doesn't care about my own playing. He just came here with his wife to have a nice time in the afternoon. He's already summed me up within 4 measures, you know, if he likes my playing or thinks I'm any good, whatever it is. He's already past that. I'm the only one obsessing about this at that point. So I started having fun, because this is leading into the block chords, because George Shearing was known for popularizing the block chords. So I started doing a little bit of that. So we're playing, you know, so I'm going. Fun with George Shearing style every once in a while, not as much to change the whole arrangement or anything, but I could throw in that stuff, and then I just started having fun with it, you know, and that was it. But crazy, right? That's what we go through as performers sometimes. So that leads me into the truth about block chords. So this idea of harmonizing a melody with a full chord underneath, and often the melody down the octave in the left hand. That is the style that he popularized with his quintet in the 1950s. It originally came from big band arranging. It's how a sax section you'd harmonize a sax section with 5 sax players, the lead alto, the second alto, first tenor, second tenor, and baritone. They'd sort of move as a block, sort of chunky chords together often. And Milt Buckner, who was more known as an organist, took that style and applied it to the keyboard on the organ in the 40s and 50s. And then George Shearing, and he credited Milt Buckner as inspiring him, he just transferred it to the piano. Other people did it too. Dave Brubeck was playing block chords, Ahmad Jamal, Herbie Hancock, Miles Davis's pianists, including Red Garland, Bill Evans, Wynton Kelly, and Herbie Hancock all played block chords at times, partly because they'd be in the studio recording and they'd be taking a solo, and Miles would apparently go up to them and whisper in their ear, play block chords. So if you hear Red Garland go from, it's because Miles was probably whispering in his ear, play block chords, play block chords. And so the thing about block chords is that they're just a wonderful way to play any harmony that fits the chord. So if it's a B flat 6, I could play it like this, or I could put in the 7th, or whatever's on top, you just find the inversion that works under it. And there's certain sort of styles. You could play big fat chords, or you could play the ones that I mentioned. Oscar Peterson will use them too. But kind of unfortunately, I think in just the way the internet is, certain things get very popular, or people write books about this, and they emphasize 1 or 2 ways that they like, but then people think that that's the whole thing. So you get this idea where you alternate major chords with diminished chords, which does sound good. It sounds very good. So it's major chord, diminished, major, diminished, major. It's one particular way of doing it that, to me, evokes the 1940s. You know, it sounds really great on minor. Sort of Afro-Cuban music from that time, and also big band swing. You could listen to many recordings and not hear that. It's one certain approach, and for now, a lot of people think it's the introductory, or the only way you can play it, or the way you have to learn first. It really isn't the best way to learn first, because it's so highly specific, it actually limits you into playing those. And if you come up with a melody, or you think of one in your head that doesn't fit that, you don't know what to do. Whereas it's really just harmonizing it with whatever the chord is. Wherever you are, just harmonize it with the chord. If you're playing a C and it's a B flat chord, just play a B flat chord, but instead of B flat, you play a C on top. It sounds great. See? I went from C to B flat. I even kept the voicing under it. The same. Sounds wonderful. And that's really the style of block chords. It's kind of like Like, to use a food analogy, if you like making grilled cheese sandwiches and you put something unusual on it, like let's say you like to put a little slice of pickle on grilled cheese sandwiches. Fair enough, you like it, it tastes good to you. And then let's say you have some friends over and you say, hey, let's try it with pickles on it. And you make it for them, they're like, hey, this tastes good. And then you decide to make a recipe book on grilled cheese sandwiches. You're probably not going to put pickled grilled cheese sandwiches as the first thing or the baseline, like this is the way you make a grilled cheese sandwich. No, you'd say you put cheese on a sandwich, you put butter or oil on the bread, and then you toast it, right? Hey, if you also want to do something different, you put the pickle on it or olives or whatever. That's what this diminished thing is. It's sort of like the grilled cheese sandwiches with pickles. It's a specific way to do it that does sound very specific, and it's actually not as flexible, nearly as flexible, as just finding whatever version of the chord you can to play under it, whether you're playing a melody or an improv. And the George Shearing approach is much broader than this sort of major or minor chord diminished alteration thing. So it's still a great technique to use, but it's not the entry point. The entry point is just trying to play chords, harmonizing a melody with the basic chords of the tune. That's what George Shearing basically did too. So I hope that gives you a little overview, and it might save you years of struggle on this by starting in a more broad and simpler way that is actually the real way too. So hopefully that makes some sense. Glad I got that out there on the internet, sort of a counteract this craziness that's going on with these diminished things, as if it's like the end all and be all. Another quick thing, so in 1987 I was Gerry Mulligan's band assistant, and I remember once Gerry came to lunch. It was at his house. I was like photocopying music for him, and then we met for lunch and we're having pasta, which we probably had every day. He married an Italian countess. He had pasta every day for lunch. And so he said, oh, I just got off the phone with George Shearing. And he told me what they talked about. He said that George Shearing said that there was another myth about block chords, that you have to harmonize every note. And he said, no, you can ghost some. You can play this as a chord, and then the next couple single notes, and then some more chords. See? And again, it just makes it a simpler entry part. If you're playing and there's a couple notes that are hard to harmonize, you don't harmonize them, right? And that's what George Shearing did, the guy who's most famous for it. So that's straight from the horse's mouth, from George Shearing's mouth through Gerry Mulligan to me to you. Fourth generation from George Shearing. So I'm going to take Lullaby of Birdland, which has been performed by everybody. Even Mariah Carey has done this in concert. She said she grew up singing it, did it in concert. I think it's still on YouTube. And I will use some of that block chord technique while I'm playing it and just see where it goes. I'm going to start with that as a matter of fact. Lots of fun. And getting back to my story about George Shearing at the beginning, kind of came full circle because now I can have fun with the block chords, and I'm not freaking out because George Shearing is watching me play. So hope you enjoyed that. And I hope also the discussion about the block chords really sort of helped get you on the right track if you think that, oh, I've got to master these diminished kind of things first. No, it's about getting to know the vocabulary of just harmonizing melodies with chords in a simple way. And then you can use that as sort of just a little, okay, if I want to get this particular sound, which I personally associate with the 40s, I'll go for that. So there you go. Thanks for being here. Good luck with your music. Next time we check out Keith Jarrett tune, The Magician in You, and enjoy the journey and let the music flow.